Hello and welcome back to our sustainable journey. I'm Steve, and since we're in the kitchen, we must be making worm chow. So I'm going to show you the standard recipe that if you Google worm chow, you're going to come up with. But then I'm going to show you what we do, because I'm not a fan of this recipe. Not because it's not good for the worms, because it is. It's great. It's really good stuff. But it's buying food for worms doesn't make sense when we have stuff that can be composted or fed to worms already. So this recipe promotes consumerism, and I'm not a big fan of that. It doesn't make any sense. So first ingredient is going to be your whole wheat flour, okay? And you want to make sure that the ingredients say whole wheat flour and nothing else. The next one is cornmeal, pretty standard stuff. Again, make sure you're, so this is the one that I have. This isn't the one that I want because it's got a bunch of other ingredients in it. Iron, whatever that stuff is, riboflavin, folic acid. So I have another one, we ran out. So I'll use this one this round, but normally I would find one that is completely plain of everything. The next one. Ingredient, oats, rolled oats, oatmeal. It's your standard oatmeal. Pretty common stuff. Again, make sure it has no other ingredients in it. And then the last one is one of two things. So one is oyster shell, ground oyster shell. You can get these at most feed stores. We use it for our chicken, so I already had some. That's why it's in this bucket. Or eggshells. With eggshells, you want to make sure that you cook them at a low temperature until they're brittle and then grind them up. The reason you're cooking them is to make sure that there is no salmonella, and you want to rinse them. It's kind of a nightmare. What we do with our eggshells is we actually feed them back to the chickens to give them the calcium that they need for producing more eggs. So, plus we cook all the eggs that weren't up to snuff or that cracked or whatever. So they get a lot of protein that way. So anyway, we're going to use oyster shells for this one. So what the recipe is basically 1 part of the wheat, 1 part cornmeal, 1 part oats, half a part oyster or eggshell. Grind them up in a food processor. Basically, don't tell your spouse, and get it as fine as possible. So what we're going to do is I'm going to grind up about a cup worth of each, and then we'll sprinkle it in one of the bins, and then we'll check on it in a day or two and see how they did. So I will grind these up. I'm not going to bore you with me grinding, but essentially I'm going to grind these up. Okay, so we're out in the barn. We've mixed up our ingredients. So this is kind of what it looks like. It's just it's dry powder essentially. And I had an idea. So there are many other things that work really well as worm chow. And so I am going to use one bin and see which one brings all the worms to the surface. So we have one of our giant CFTs, right? Chock full of worms. We are going to divide this up. So the great thing about using plywood is it's got these lines on it. So that will be one section, this will be another section, that'll be another section, that'll be another section. So we'll do 4 different types of feed. And we'll start with the one that when you Google worm chow, you will get. And we'll cover this first section with that one. And then I'll show you some others that people use or that we use. And kind of go from there. So you just want to sprinkle it out. Nothing too crazy. So I made enough to fill this bin. Put it in the corners too. Get it up to the line, right? Make it fair. Okay. So that'll be section 1 is going to be your traditional oatmeal, cornmeal, wheat, flour, and oyster or eggshell. Section 2 is going to be our chicken feed, actually. So I'll show you our big gravity wagon. It's our gravity wagon in our shed. We ordered 6,000 pounds. This is what 6,000 pounds, well, technically we've probably used 1,000 pounds. 6,000 pounds of chicken feed looks like filling up our gravity wagon. So I can climb up here, hopefully without dying. There we go. All right, so you can see we've taken quite a bit out already. And it just, you just need to bump the side and it'll fall down. Not a big deal. But this is it's called a layer mix. So it's about 16% protein. And it's ground really fine. So you can look. Let's see if I can mix up. So you can see how fine it is. It's basically ground corn and other miscellaneous ingredients. It's gonna have some oyster shells for calcium because they're layers, right? So layer means hen that lays eggs. And so we get the specific feed for them from our mill. It comes all ground up like this so that it helps them with egg laying, so it's less stressful on them. And they get all the nutrients they need in this one feed. But it also would make a great worm food. So now you've seen the big gravity wagon. We get our feed 6,000 pounds at a time because it's cheaper that way. And so it looks very similar. It's a little bit more yellow than that stuff, but it's layer feed. And so it has a lot of the same stuff. This is actually really hard to do because I'm used to pouring it out by the ton. All right, so it's specifically for laying hens, which means it's got the oyster shell for grit for their gizzards, which works out because the worms also have gizzards and need the same kind of stuff. All right, that looks adequate. Okay, third, let me put this away. All right, third is going to be one of our food scrap buckets. Because that's what we do. So, looks pretty moldy. Let me find a shovel. There we go. So we use food scraps and shredded cardboard and paper. So I will get this in here. All right, it's gonna be hard to stay within the lines. So we've got banana, some banana and coffee grounds, banana, orange peel, eggshell, I don't know what that green thing is, but I know it will break down. Leeks, maybe? All right, more banana, oranges, coffee grounds. peppers. Orange peel. Orange peel. Oh my goodness. Come on. Grapes. And more coffee grounds and things, and peppers. All right. I'm gonna call that good. And then we'll add cardboard on top. So, I'll just sprinkle this out. All right. And then last but not least, another feed that we use for the worms is cow poop. So I went out and grabbed shovelfuls of cow poop to bring in here to show you all. So you're welcome. Let me get this in place. All right, so it's a mixture of hay, straw, and poop. So you can see there's giant clumps of poop in here. So I am not sure how I'm gonna spread this out. Usually we let it break down a little bit. Oh yeah, you can smell the freshness of the cow poop. I realize how hard it is to spread cow poop. How many times in your life have you ever had to spread cow poop evenly? Probably never. And yet here we are, spreading cow poop, trying to do it as evenly as possible. And that is an impossible task. Okay, especially when you're trying to stay within the lines while spreading cow poop. Oh my gosh, there's these giant clumps. Because what happens is they pull the hay out of their feeder and then they poop right where they eat, because cows are incredibly lazy animals. And so it all kind of gets clumped together and it builds this mesh, essentially, that is impossible to separate. So and I'd use my hands, but no. Okay. Usually I use a pitchfork and just dump the whole thing on top and then spread it out with a rake. Or we leave it in the compost pile and let it break down there, because cow poop is just as good for your garden as worm castings are. Another one while I'm talking here and trying to scoop. Another one that you can consider, oh, that's a big piece. There we go. Is chicken manure. Now, I don't recommend it because it is really high in nitrogen. So using their manure and their bedding and things like that, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's really high in nitrogen, so you need to kind of be careful. So, cow manure and straw, food scraps and cardboard, chicken layer feed, traditional worm chow. So we've got 4 different sets. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this in newspaper and wet it down. Because that's what we do with the food scraps, so I feel like it's only fair to do it for all 4. And then we'll check on it tomorrow morning. So let me go get some newspaper and we'll start getting it covered. All right, we'll put it on mist. And that should be enough. Ooh. Enough to get it going. Sure. Come on now. All right. You don't need it soaked, but just enough to wet it down. Did you hear about the guy who tried to grab fog? Missed. All right. Oh, it's already coming apart. That's all right. Okay. So, all right, we've wet them down, covered them up. We will check back on them in a week and see which one got devoured the most. Stay tuned. Let me know what you see.